All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Crypto Watch. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone is having a great Sunday. Great weekend so far. Right. So as the topic for today, right, it's actually related to what I've covered last week, right, on Ripple and Bitcoin. Right. So if you have been following the price action for Ripple, right, as well as Bitcoin, you have seen that it actually gained quite a fair amount in the past few days, right, the past week of trading. Yep. In fact, right, if you look at the details, right, Ripple actually gained 7%, right, in just 2 days after my sharing last Sunday. And as for Bitcoin, right, Bitcoin has actually gained 9% in just 5 days, right? The highest price clock, not yesterday, but actually on Friday, right? Yep. So were all these expected, right? So it actually went according to my trading plan, right? So today I'm going to break down to all of you to see how it is actually done, right? How I actually, predicted that there might be upside for these two crypto coins. Right. But if you're here live with me, right, don't forget to click that like button, right, so that I know that you are here live with me. Right. So for those of you, right, who are new, right, hearing me for the first time, right, let me do a brief introduction of myself. Right. So I am the trade engineer, right, and I have 6 to 7 years of trading experience, traded numerous instruments, right, including stocks, futures, forex, and crypto, right, and helped numerous aspiring traders unlock their best trade, unleashing the trading potential within them, as well as all these can be done using just some simple yet effective techniques. Right, and as always, right, let me give a few disclaimers down here, right. While I try to ensure the accuracy of information, right, there will be no responsibility taken on my side. Ideas, suggestions, examples, presented here are just for reference and educational purposes only, right? This presentation is not intended to give you recommendation to buy or sell, right? And I shall not have any liability, right? Last but not least, all copyrights reserved. Right. Let's quickly go into the topic proper, right? About Ripple, right? So this is basically the price chart, right? The daily price chart for Ripple, right? And as you can look at the price, right, in detail, right? This circled portion down here, right, is actually corresponding to the day last Sunday where I actually shared, right, on Ripple, right? So it will close actually at a price of 0.80606, right, to be precise. And in just 2 days, right, on the 22nd of March, Tuesday, right, it actually closed, the highest point down here was 0.86, right, 0.86489. So, right, if you work out the math, right, what does this translate to? This actually translates to about, as I mentioned, 7% gain, right, in just 2 days. Yep, and did you take action last week? Right, so I hope some of you did after hearing what I shared last week, and hopefully you make some money out of this trade. Right, and let's quickly go through right how I managed to predict that there might be upside, right, to this coin. Right, so there were some bullish signs, right, as I mentioned last week, right. It actually crossed this downtrend line, right, this immediate downtrend line, and the price then, right, so this is just a recap from last week, right. So the price then was supported by this downtrend line, and that could indicate, right, some further upside, right, if this was supported. Also, right, the second point is that basically it's supported by this uptrend line, and if this trend of high low continue, it might also seem further upside. We also saw that the MACD, right, has reached into the positive region, right? It actually crossed over into the positive region, right? Yep, and the 20 SMA and 50 SMA, right? We actually saw, right, that the 20 SMA is above the 50 SMA, right? Although the gap was narrowing, it was still positive. Right, and we also went through some of the resistance level last week, right? We showed this conservative downtrend line, right, where we connect the wicks of the candles, right, and you're still trading below this conservative downtrend line. Right, and there's this horizontal resistance, right, that was tested numerous times in the past, right? It's about 0.85 to 0.86, right? And it was still trading below this horizontal resistance. Right, and the support levels, right, that we showed last week as well, this uptrend line, right, which I mentioned just now as well as this, horizontal support level, right, was tested numerous times before as well, and now it's actually trading above this horizontal support, right, and this corresponds to about 0.69 to 0.70. Right, what I suggested at that time, right, last week was basically, if you are an aggressive trader, you might want to enter a long position, right, set a stop loss below this immediate downtrend line. Or, if you're more conservative, you can actually wait for the conservative downtrend line to be cleared or the horizontal resistance to be cleared, right? But if the support breaks in terms of the uptrend line, right, then we do not enter any long position. So what happened, right, ever since then, right? What happened in this week, right? And before I go through the details, right, if you are finding value, right, in this video, right, do give me a like or a love, like, so that I will continue sharing all such my tips and insights with all of you. Right, let's quickly go through, right, what happened ever since then, right? So we have about 7 days of trading days since last Sunday, right? And this is the updated daily price chart, right, for this week, right? So we have this first this downtrend line, right? This was the immediate downtrend line, right? You can see that it continues to trade above the immediate downtrend line, right? And in fact, right, on Monday, right, it was quite a green candle. It actually kind of bounced above this downtrend line, right, and continues to trade above this downtrend line, right? So as what I mentioned here, right, the price actually bounced strongly, right, on the first weekday last week, or actually this week, right, on Monday, 21st of March, right? So it actually this was the previous resistance level. It actually cleared this resistance, right, and it actually bounced off this, so this became the support, right? And this uptrend line, right, it was still trading above the same uptrend line that I showed last week, right? The MACD, right, the MACD still remained positive for the entire period. And you look at the S20 SMA and the 50 SMA, right? No doubt the gap is narrow, right? But it is still more than the 50 SMA, right? So this implies that the uptrend, right, of this particular Viper's coin is still intact, right? And this is the other downtrend line, right? That we connect the wicks, right? It's the more conservative downtrend line, right? That was the previous resistance, right? So if you recall, last week it was still trading below this downtrend line, right? But look at how the price, actually moved ever since then, right? In this week, right? So this actually, in this week, right, it actually broke above this conservative downtrend line that was connecting all the wicks of the candles, right? So and if you notice, right, it is consistently, trading above this line now. In fact, it looks like, it is supported by this line now, right? So it used to be the resistance. Now it is the support. Right, and the resistance, right, the horizontal resistance, right, it is still resisted by this same horizontal resistance line, right? In fact, if we look at this particular day on 22nd of March, right, that is Tuesday, right, it is, it actually attempted to break above this resistance, but it failed and then came back down, right? So it retraced back down. And now it's still trading below this horizontal resistance level. Right, and the support, right? So the support, we have this uptrend line that was mentioned, right? It's still the same uptrend line, right? It is still trading above this line. So that's a good sign. And we have that, first horizontal support, right? It's still trading this above this first horizontal support as well. So that is good as well. So all this, still remain intact. The upside of this coin still remains. Right. But that is just, the update with the prices from last week, what does the future hold, right? And once again, right, before I go into the details, right, if you are finding value so far, right, with my sharing, don't forget to click that like or love button, right? All right, and let's quickly now go through, right, what are the future, what's the future lying for this XRP or Ripple coin. Right, so this chart has a lot of indicators, so I'll go through one by one. Yep, don't be overwhelmed by this, right? Okay, so let's go through one by one. Right, so first of all, I draw your attention to this downtrend line, right? So this is the same downtrend line, that conservative downtrend line that I so-called name it, right? That connects the wicks of the candles together, right? So as I mentioned, right, previously, right, it has crossed this conservative downtrend line, right? So it has crossed it, right, convincingly on this day, right? And now it's trading above this downtrend line, right? It looks like it's supported, right? But it's very close to this line right now. But we have to see whether this remains as a strong support for future prices, right? If it actually remains and actually bounce up, right, then there could be further upside to this coin, right? It could go even higher. Yeah, but actually, if it breaks down, then you do have to watch out for the next support. The uptrend line, right? So this is the same uptrend line, right? So if that's this support, right, actually, if this downtrend line support actually breaks, then we could be looking at this next level, right, as the next support, right? So all eyes here on this first downtrend line as the support, right? If it doesn't hold, then you might see, it retest this uptrend line again. Yep, this horizontal resistance. So as I mentioned right earlier, this horizontal resistance of 0.85 to 0.86, right? It tried to test, on the 22nd of March, right? It tried to break, feared, close below this horizontal resistance, right? So now it's trading below this level. Eventually, right, we have to see this resistance break in order to actually see further upside for this Ripple coin, right? So we also have to look at this level, right, to see whether this level will eventually break. Yep. If it breaks, there'll be a good sign. Yep. You might intend to add some long positions, right, to your trade. Right, and the horizontal support, right? So this is the previous horizontal support, right? It still remains as a horizontal support, right? It's quite a distance from the horizontal support now, right? But if the things go downhill for this coin, right? If that conservative downtrend line breaks, right? This uptrend line also breaks, then we might be looking at this horizontal support, as the second layer of support, right? So that is something you have to watch out if this turns bearish. Right, and the 50 and 20 SMA, right? So as of now, we still see that the 20 SMA is above the 50 SMA, right? Yeah, sorry, this is a typo, right? So it's the 20 and the 50 SMA, right? So the 20 SMA remains above the 50 SMA, right? So in all the typo here, right, it's actually 20 SMA remaining above the 50 SMA, right? So we do have to see this 20 SMA above the 50 SMA. Although the gap is narrowing, right? That's something that's of a concern. Yeah, but if it still remains above, that is still a good sign. It indicates that the upside for this coin still remains, right? But we do have to be mindful that the gap is narrowing. And last but not least, right, the MACD, right? So this is the daily MACD, right? It is still positive, right? But the gap is also narrowing, right? So that is also another layer of concern, right? We don't want to see it cross into a negative region, right? Because that might mean some bearishness for this coin. Right. So here's my suggested trading plan, right? As always, right, I just like to give a disclaimer down here, right? That this is my own opinion, right? Please do your own due diligence, right? So, let's go through some of the points that I mentioned here, right? So, if this conservative downtrend line, right, remains supported, right? Currently, it seems like it's supported, right? We can, either initiate, right? If you haven't actually entered a position, right? Or if you actually have, you might actually want to add a long positions, right? You want to add some the buy, add more coins to your buy position. And to be conservative, right, you can actually set your cut loss slightly below this downtrend line, right, because this is now acting as a support, right? But if you are a more conservative trader, right, you want to actually wait for more confirmation, right? A better, maybe a more conservative option is to actually wait for this horizontal resistance, right? This horizontal resistance shown over here, right, at 0.85 to 0.86, right? Wait for it to clear convincingly, right, before you actually add to your long positions, right? And you can just set your cut loss, below this, slightly below this horizontal resistance. Right, but on the bear side of things, right, if this turns bearish, right, so we do have to look out for this as the first support, right, and the uptrend line, the second support, right. If this two breaks, right, then we do have to wait and wait for it to find the eventual support before we actually think of entering a long position, right. So I also note the as what I mentioned here, the horizontal support, right. So this is like the second layer of support, right, that you might be watching out for. Actually, it's a third, right? So because we have the first here, the second here, and this is the third layer of the support. Right. So this is just some of my opinions on how this might pan out, how Reaper might pan out in future, right? So as always, please do your own due diligence. Right, and as what I mentioned in last week's video, right? There is this court case, right? That is acting as a backdrop for Ripple, right? So there is this court case between Ripple and SEC, right? So although it seems a bit favorable, right, to Ripple at the moment, right? But we still need to bear in mind that this court case is not settled yet, right? There could be a surprise judgment, right? That is we won't know for sure, right? So this is something that you might have to bear in mind, right? So this is the latest the latest news regarding this court case, right? That I've taken just recently, right? A few days ago on 24th of March from the financefeed.com, right? So basically, right, there are some other developments, right, for this court case, right? So there are some dates that are highlighted over here, right? So they do have they're trying to actually end this lawsuit quickly, right? So there could be a conclusion sometime in April, right? And there are some the details are over here, right? There's April 8th, there are some there's a motion that needs to be submitted, right? Then April 15th, there is this SEC position, the additional discovery to be filed, and April 22nd, the scheduling order, the joint proposed scheduling order is to be filed, right? So all this, we have to bear in mind, right? Because this can actually affect what will happen to XRP or Ripple, right? So do bear in mind, do keep a close eye on this court case, right? And if it turns out well, there could be further upside to this particular Ripple coin. Right, and that concludes my sharing for Ripple, like XRP. I hope that's beneficial for all of you. And if you have found value, right, in my sharing so far, once again, I urge all of you to just click that like or love button, right? Thanks in advance for helping me to click that like or love button. And let's go on to the second part, right? Without further ado, right, on Bitcoin, right? As I always go through every week, right, a review of Bitcoin. And in this week, right, I'll also go through, how I actually managed to, predict the upside of Bitcoin, right? That 9% gain, right, in 5 days. Let's quickly recap, right, on Bitcoin. And if you haven't caught it already, right, do check out my previous analysis, right, in last week's video, as well as the previous few weeks. Right, let's quickly go through the price breakdown of Bitcoin, right, just as I did for Ripple, right? So, last Sunday, right, 20th of March, right, it actually closed a slightly red candle at about 41,276, right, US dollars for Bitcoin. Right, and you see that actually, say for the 21st, right, which are red, ever since then, it was green on the way, and it was ascending, right? And eventually, it hit the peak, right, on the 25th of March, right? That was, Friday, right? Just 2 days ago, right? And the highest price was $45,112. And if you work out the math, right, that translates to about a 9% gain, right, in just 5 days. So once again, right, I hope all of you have some of you have taken action, right, and made some money from this trade. Let's quickly recap again, right, what we covered last week, right? So I shared on this downtrend line as well, right? So basically, it did cross this downtrend line, right? It was staying above, right, quite briefly, right, on that on my last sharing, right? And we do have to watch out to see whether the price will actually stay above this level, right? And we have this uptrend line, right? So that is the support, right, for this price. The upper resistance line, right? So it was tested numerous times in the past, right? But it's currently still trading below it at that time last week, right? So we wanted to see whether if actually this price actually breaks past this resistance, there could be further upside. Right, the immediate resistance line, right, as shown down here, right, at about 42,000, right. So it was testing the immediate resistance line as well at the time. And we saw some bullishness in the MACD as well. Right? We saw that it actually had crossed over. And we are not sure whether it will remain positive, right? But that is indeed a bullish sign. So at that time, right, what I mentioned then, right, was to enter a long position, right, if there is a convincing breakout, either a convincing breakout on Monday or the price actually remain supported by this downtrend line, right? But that is if you're an aggressive trader, right? If you are more conservative, right, you might actually want to wait, right, for that upper resistance line to be cleared, right, before entering a long position. But of course, I mentioned the bearish side of things as well, right? If the support breaks in terms of uptrend line, then we should wait for next support level. Right, so here's the updated price chart for Bitcoin, right? Updated daily price chart for Bitcoin for this week, right? So I updated the price, recent prices for this week, and you can see, right, quite clearly, this is the same downtrend line. You can see quite clearly that it has been supported, right? In fact, actually, this was about Sunday, right? So actually, it came down slightly. There's two red candles down here, right? But you notice that when the closing price still remains above, still remains supported, right, by this downtrend line, right? So of course, we probably won't enter at this point here. But when we saw this green candle and it actually bounced up, we might actually try, to enter, some small position, right, some long position. Yep, because that actually indicates that it actually has successfully bounced, and this has formed the support, right? And we can see, right, this uptrend line, right, it still remains trading above this uptrend line, right? The resistance, right? So this resistance line, right, that was drawn, right? So it has, there's actually two resistance line, but the lower line here, right, it actually has slightly crossed above this level, right? As of here, it actually slightly crossed above this level, right? The immediate resistance, right? So this is the immediate resistance that we mentioned last week, and you can see that the price is actually continuing to trade above this immediate resistance line. So now it has turned to a support. Right, and the MACD, right, we can see the whole period of time, MACD continues to be positive, right? And the good thing, right, is that the gap is actually widening, right? So that may indicate that there could be continued bullishness for this particular Bitcoin. Right, so what's the future for Bitcoin, right? Now that we know the price action for last week, right? So here are some pointers for you to take note, right? So first of all, we have another resistance line, right? So it is slightly a slight distance away, right? It's actually the upper one here, down here, right? At about from 45,300 to 45,500, right? So this particular line, this upper line down here, right? It was tested a few times before, right? Over here, right? The wicks here as well, right? And it used to be the support, right? So you can see previously it was well supported at this level, right? So this is a key level to watch out for, right? Eventually, right, for continued upside for Bitcoin, we do have to see a convincing breakout from this resistance level, right? So this all eyes on this level now, right? This new resistance level that's slightly higher than the previous resistance that I drawn just now. Right, and we have a new uptrend line, right? Because you can the previous line, it's outdated already. We need to refresh with the new prices, right? So if we draw this new uptrend line, right, it is currently supported at this point, at this line, right? And we do want to see the future prices, right, remain supported by this line, right? If we continue to trade above this line, right, there could be no further upside, to this Bitcoin, right? We don't want it to actually break below this uptrend line. Right, and the horizontal support, right? So the horizontal support at about 39,600 to 39,700, right? So if this uptrend line actually breaks, right, we could be looking at that next support, right? That is actually corresponding to this previously immediate resistance line, but now it is the support, right? So that is the next level to watch out for if this uptrend line actually breaks. Right, and MACD, right? MACD is positive now, right? As I mentioned, the gap is widening, right? But we do have to watch out, right, to see whether it remains positive moving forward, right? If it remains positive, that is a good sign. That indicates that there could be continued upside for this Bitcoin. Right. So what's the future trade going to be like for Bitcoin? Right. Once again, right, this is my own opinion, right? Do your own due diligence, right, before entering any positions in Bitcoin. Right. So what I suggest here, right, is actually if you haven't already initiated a position for Bitcoin, right, you might want to wait for that horizontal resistance, right, at 45,300 to 45,500 to actually break out, right, to actually have a convincing breakout from this horizontal level down here, right. And of course, we need to cross check with the MACD, right? It has to remain positive, right? Then we can actually add or initiate long positions. Yep, but things might turn bearish as well, right? So if the support breaks, right? So the first support here will be that new uptrend line now, right? So if this new uptrend line actually breaks, right, convincingly, right, do not, right, maybe you should not actually enter a long position and should actually wait for the next support to be found. Yep, and that concludes my sharing for Bitcoin. And if you are finding value, right, in this video so far, right, do give this video a like or a love, right, so that I know that you're finding value, and I'll continue sharing such content with all you every week. Right, and before I end off the session for today, right, just some reminders once again. Right, so for those of you who haven't joined me already, right, I have a Facebook group, right, and the handle is basically tte.the.trade.engineer, right? You can join me on my Facebook group, right, where I'll be sharing, not just about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, right, but also, other instruments like stocks, futures, anything related to trading, right? I'll be sharing on my Facebook group. As well, I'll be sharing, any resources, any useful resources that I have, right? I'll also share in the group as well. So you can just join me on my Facebook group, right? And yep, absolutely, it's absolutely free, right? Yep, just need to answer some of the membership questions when you actually request to join. Right, and for those of you who are watching me for the first time, right, do follow some of my social media pages, right? So I have 3 main pages here, right? I have Facebook, I have Instagram, and Twitter, right? So the handles are found here, right? You can do follow me if you'd like to actually gain some further insights into trading, right, of other instruments. And once again, right, if you like my sharing for today, right, don't forget to like or love this video, right, and also leave a comment down below, right, on what you think of my sharing today, right, or what you would like me to share next week, right. And if you find it beneficial, right, please also do share this video with other people that you think might benefit from my sharing today. Right. And with that, right, I've concluded the session for today. Yep. I hope all you have gleaned something from this session, right? And hopefully, we can continue to make money, right, from trading in the next week. Right. So with that, I wish everyone a very good night and see you guys, next Sunday, same time at 9:30 p.m. Right. See you guys and have a good remaining evening ahead. Goodbye.